Do us a favour, plug me into a Sega.
Now whack on the patches and I'll get back to sleep.
1992. The Sega Mega Drive is everywhere. Nintendo fans are talking about Super Mario World, F-Zero and Super Castlevania IV. Arcades are packed with flashy new fighting games. The future, it seems, has arrived.
With thousands of colors, 16-bit graphic technology, and 10-channel mega stereo sound.
But in homes all across Britain and Europe, another story is quietly unfolding. Thousands of us are still clutching those chunky Master System controllers, blissfully unaware that we're about to play one of the greatest horror games Sega ever published. A game that most of the world would never even know existed. Its name was Master of Darkness. For decades, it's lived in the shadow of one unavoidable comparison, Sega's Castlevania Clone. It's a label that's followed the game ever since its release. Gothic castles, skeletons, graveyards. Even Dracula himself is waiting at the end of the adventure. Case closed, right? Well, not quite. Because every now and then, gaming history leaves something behind. A great game released at exactly the wrong moment. Master of Darkness arrived too late, reached too few people, and slowly faded into obscurity. This wasn't because it was a bad game, but the fact that history had already turned the page. Tonight, we're opening another dusty case from the crypt to uncover one of Sega's greatest forgotten successes. In the early 90s, console manufacturers weren't just competing with hardware, they were competing with system libraries. If your rival had a genre-defining game that your audience couldn't play, you had two choices. You either accepted the gap, or you filled it yourself.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
And Sega had shown that they weren't afraid to do that. Need an epic fantasy to rival Nintendo's Zelda series? Along came Golden Axe Warrior. Looking for a sprawling sci-fi action game like Metroid? There was Zillion. The Sega Master System desperately needed a big-name gothic action platformer. Castlevania was a household name, and Sega needed something to fill that void. The solution came from a small, talented studio called Sims. Sims was a Japanese developer, and a new one at that, established in 1991 as a joint venture with Sega. They were known for making solid ports, including a fantastic Master System version of Ninja Gaiden. In 1992, they delivered what seemed to be exactly what Sega was looking for. It first appeared on the Sega Game Gear in Japan, called In the Wake of the Vampire, and Vampire Master of Darkness in North America. It was a clear, direct response to Konami's smash hit. The console version, titled Master of Darkness, landed on the Master System in PAL regions around 1992 and 1993, and right there is our first clue in its disappearance. The superior Master System version was never released in North America. Most American players who played it, it was probably on a Game Gear. The console version was a secret, hidden in plain sight. The story was a fantastic mashup of 19th century horror. You play as Dr. Ferdinand Social, a psychologist who during a Ouija board session finds out the recent Jack the Ripper murders are tied to a dark conspiracy. He discovers the Ripper is just a pawn for a much bigger evil, Count Dracula. It was an ambitious setup, blending real-world history with gothic fiction. Instead of simply borrowing Dracula and calling it a day, the game builds its world around Victorian Britain. It opens with the Whitechapel murders, introduces Jack the Ripper into its story, and slowly pulls you into a world that feels like an old Hammer horror film brought to life. It's wonderfully melodramatic, and that's what I love about Master of Darkness. You can almost feel the influence of Bram Stoker, old ghost stories, and the golden age of British horror cinema. Of course, atmosphere only works if the hardware can sell the illusion. Thankfully, Master of Darkness is one of those games that looks good and sounds good. The player sprite is large, detailed, and smoothly animated. Each stage has its own visual identity. The gloomy graveyard, the eerie wax museum, cobbled streets with newspapers flapping in the wind. Proof that atmosphere isn't about technical horsepower as much as a compelling story and good art direction. The music perfectly matches the mood, haunting melodies, uneasy rhythms. Themes that linger in your head long after you've switched the console off. Got to be in the top 10 best Master System soundtracks of all time. Which brings us back to that old criticism. Is Master of Darkness inspired by Castlevania? There's no point pretending otherwise. But inspiration isn't the same thing as imitation, and after spending a few hours with it, something interesting happens. You stop comparing it to Castlevania altogether, and simply start enjoying Master of Darkness for what it is. A challenging, gothic action game with a compelling story, decent graphics, varied combat, and a killer soundtrack. So if Master of Darkness gets so much right, why did it disappear? By the time Master of Darkness arrived in 1992, the gaming industry had one eye firmly fixed on the future. The 16-bit wars were dominating magazine covers. Sega's marketing machine was throwing everything behind Sonic and the Mega Drive, and Nintendo had the Super NES and Super Castlevania IV. Against that backdrop, the humble Master System looked a little old.
The Sega Master System. The challenge will always be there.
Outside Europe and Brazil, the console had already faded from shop shelves, meaning Master of Darkness reached a surprisingly small audience. For many players in North America, the Master System version never arrived at all. It's a shame we never got a sequel on the Mega Drive, but seeing as Sega finally got a Castlevania game in 1994 with Castlevania Bloodlines, I guess Master of Darkness 2 seemed like a lost cause. Sometimes brilliant games are released at exactly the wrong moment, overshadowed by bigger names and arriving just as everyone has already packed up and moved on. And maybe that's why Master of Darkness feels so appropriate for this channel. Because every time we open another forgotten VHS case, slide an aging cartridge into a console, or rescue another overlooked game from history, we're doing more than revisiting the past. We're keeping it alive. And in an age where the production of physical media seems to be coming to its eventual end, with Sony ceasing physical game disc production in early 2028. It's dark days indeed. Obviously, emulation will keep these retro games alive long after the cartridges start failing, but for those of us that prefer to play old school on original hardware, it's more important than ever that we continue to enjoy these relics of the past while we can. So if you've never played Master of Darkness, consider this your invitation, and spend an evening with one of Sega's greatest forgotten horror games. Till next time, Crypt Dwellers.